When looking at Matt Riddle's career in combat sports and sports entertainment, the word natural goes hand in hand. Wherever he's gone, he's excelled and made a name for himself. However, another word you can attach to him is controversy. Everywhere the original bro has gone, be it UFC or WWE, he's found himself as the center of problems, and now it seems like his downfall is his own doing. Issues with UFC president Dana White, personal matters becoming very public, burning bridges with WWE legends, and so much more. Now he's out of WWE after it looked like he was going to be a constant for the company. There's so much that is left unexplored with him as a performer, and as of now, he's a what if. What if everything went right? What if he didn't rub some people the wrong way? And most importantly, what if he simply just stayed out of trouble? Before getting into his roller coaster WWE run, we have to start in the UFC. Riddle went 1-0 as an amateur before he became a participant on the company's Ultimate Fighter series. For WWE fans, think of this as the closest thing UFC has to Tough Enough. After this, he was signed to a contract with the company, and while he was here, you could see his personality shining whenever he was on camera. As much as he was a fighter, he was an even more natural entertainer. He wanted to be the guy who everyone was talking about, and he didn't shy away from being controversial. His laid-back demeanor wasn't a gimmick, it was how he lived his life. In UFC, Riddle had an overall record of 7-3 with the promotion, but that could have been 9-3 if he didn't have 2 wins overturned. These were overturned because he tested positive for cannabis. He's always been open about his use of marijuana and still is to this day. What agitated him the most was while he was in UFC, he had a medical license to use cannabis, but the company wasn't hammering down on others who didn't have a license and cheated the system with other drugs. It was after the second failed drug test that the company let him go. He had 2 positive tests in 8 months, but things got worse when UFC president Dana White put him on blast. Riddle had done an interview with MMA Mania a little before the second failed test, and in that interview said that weed kept him from beating his 3 kids. Dana White referred to Riddle as a moron and said this about him in an interview.
Now, the reason he's not in the UFC anymore is because he could not pass a drug test. The guy couldn't pass a drug test, okay? So he couldn't, and think about this. You have to go to work 3 times a year, and you couldn't pass a drug test? You're so weak-minded and so addicted to marijuana that you couldn't stay off it enough to pass a drug test 3 times a year. Well, guess what, dummy? They drug test in the real world too. And also, this is the guy, Matt Riddle, who did an interview and said, I smoke marijuana so I don't beat my wife and children.
Oh my.
Oh my.
Riddle later stated that White had no business ethics and never treated his employees in a decent manner, adding that many people shared his sentiment. He claimed that he could talk trash about Dana all day, but that won't change the fact that White will be a successful man. He said, quote, if you think about it, if you knew one of your employees had their 3rd child and was still doing good work, but failed a drug test again, maybe he needs help. Adding that White fired him at a time where he should have weighed other options rather than taking the most extreme measure. In an interview with Chris Van Vliet, Riddle said that he stopped smoking 21 days out of the second failed test, and that if UFC were to ever call him back, he'd say no. The back and forth between these two is very, very public, and it's something that still hasn't solved itself out to this day. After this, Riddle started training to become a professional wrestler in 2014, and from here he became a sought-after name. He had the real-life pedigree, having worked in the UFC, and watching him for the first time, it was hard not to fall in love with the personality and the offense in his matches. Riddle's matches focused on fast-paced sequences and hard-hitting strikes meshed with submissions. What was cool about the character was he had a laid-back, stoner demeanor, and then when that bell rang, a switch went off and he could go with the best of them. In 2015, Riddle got himself a tryout with WWE but wasn't signed to a contract. According to him, Triple H wanted to see him gain more experience, but also added that he was denied because of his behavioral issues in UFC. By 2017, Riddle had made waves not only by how easily he'd taken to wrestling, but the mouth that was on him as well. He called out Brock Lesnar, insinuating that he was watching his matches, taking notes and making millions out of it, also adding that he would like to retire him at WrestleMania. Riddle said that he said this in good fun, but it was taken the wrong way by Brock. There's a backstage encounter that happened between these two, which I'll get to in a bit, but this was the start of a lot of outbursts for Riddle, and this stuck with him during his time in the WWE. Despite everything, by 2018, he signed with the company, making an appearance at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 4, and for fans of WWE, NXT was the pipeline to the main roster. There was a lot of excitement when he came in. It was a new prospect for the WWE to mold. He had a simple presentation. You could within a minute make out what the character was and what the original Bro character was supposed to represent. He was a laid-back, chill-as-can-be stoner who, when that bell rang, turned up the intensity and could deliver performances that were some of the best not only in NXT but in the entire company. Just under a year after signing, Riddle again started to let himself get in his own way. He began a beef with Goldberg after he criticized him for a lack of in-ring ability, taking to Twitter where he was live tweeting the disastrous Goldberg and Undertaker Super Showdown match. First, he tweeted, quote, "Awesome job, bro, you're already bleeding and the match hasn't even started." Then he posted this video 10 minutes later.
What a knee bar, bro. What a knee bar. Make me mad. You're making me mad. Keep it up. Keep it up, bro.
Once the match concluded, he tweeted, Goldberg, you live up to the hype yet again. You're absolutely the worst wrestler in the business, bro. And that's not an opinion, that's a fact." Riddle later called out Goldberg's limited in-ring ability and said, quote, "All he needs is a couple of moves in wrestling to be one of the best, and he has the spear and the jackhammer. My philosophy is you gotta be good at everything. You gotta talk, you gotta be able to walk, you gotta be able to grapple, you gotta be able to suplex, you gotta be able to do it all, so we disagree on that."
Brock Lesnar's a heavyweight that can wrestle and work, and Goldberg isn't. He's a heavyweight that can't wrestle and work.
Bill Goldberg can't even work a wrist, a headlock, or anything, so anything over 2 minutes, he's gonna mess something up.
In 2024, he added that he simply is not a huge fan of his wrestling style and work. They also had this awkward interaction backstage at SummerSlam 2019 where Riddle continuously called Goldberg his bro, but Goldberg came back and implored him that he was not his bro. Months later, while being interviewed with Sky Sports, Goldberg said this.
Who's that? I don't even know who that is. Okay, so if you want to get a good answer for me, you might want to ask a question about somebody who to me is viable, because I don't even know who that is.
To clear up the air, Riddle was on Kurt Angle's podcast saying that this was taken personal and that he was just trying to sell a possible fight and that they buried the hatchet on a plane ride back from Saudi Arabia. Also in this summer, he posted a rant where he called out Chris Jericho, Goldberg, Booker T, and Lance Storm, continuing to burn bridges for no reason at all very early into his tenure with the company.
Chris Jericho, you came at me. I don't know why you're saying listen and learn, kid. I'll beat the shit out of you. I don't understand that. I don't get it. You're soft as hell. Maybe back in your prime, but even then I would have beat the shit out of you then. So listen and learn from me, bro. Shut your mouth. Lance, I don't get it. You were born then. I remember doing a seminar with you at Legends Camp in North Carolina. I literally fell asleep during your seminar. I had to be woken up by you. I even apologized at the time. And then to think years later I'd be in NXT, and for some reason you get on your little Twitter machine, you start talking trash about me. Say, bro, barefoot or not, still 10 times the entertainer you ever were. Keep coaching, keep passing on the tradition. Just don't teach them how to be entertaining because you don't know how to. All right. And Booker T, I really like you, Booker T. Really didn't want any heat with you. But you said I couldn't work, and I'm pretty sure if you watch a couple of my matches, you'll probably realize you were really wrong about that.
Back to the timeline, his run in NXT continued and it never really flatlined. In 2020, we got the oddball pairing of the Broserweights between Pete Dunne and Matt Riddle. On one side was the chill, laid-back, no Fs given Matt Riddle, and on the other, the serious and calculated Pete Dunne, and it was a hit with the NXT audience. During this time, he appeared in the 2020 Royal Rumble, and remember earlier I talked about him calling out Brock? Well, there was a backstage incident here. At the Rumble, he saw Brock and asked him what's up. Then Brock's security guard came up behind them and asked Brock if he needed help with this. Brock then grabbed Riddle by the neck and proceeded to tell him that they would never work together and to keep his fucking mouth shut, because Riddle was continuously tagging Brock in Twitter posts and lobbying for a match. But even after this, he didn't keep Brock's name out of his mouth. In a WWE PC diary that was later released on the Rumble, he said he doesn't care if he wants the match or not, he was gonna get it. Quote, "I don't like being told no, especially when I work as hard as I do. Trust me, I guarantee you, I will get my hands on him. I will make that match happen, and I'll take his career. I'll take his career, I promise." Meanwhile, in NXT, Dunn and Riddle won the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic and then the NXT Tag Team titles later on. Eventually, he lost those titles after Dunn couldn't make it into the US because of COVID restrictions. Following a brief rivalry with Timothy Thatcher, he was called up to SmackDown in June of 2020, and from here the company was very consistent in their utilization of him. It wasn't one of these cases where someone comes in, they have a brief run, and then they slowly fade down the card. However, there was more controversy that came attached to Riddle with the call-up. During this time, there was something called the speaking out movement. For those unfamiliar, this was a period of time where accusations of misconduct came out against multiple male wrestlers from different companies, some career-ending, some downright awful, and some just plain unbelievable. One of the wrestlers accused was Matt Riddle. This came from independent wrestler Candy Cartwright. She said that following a show in May of 2018, Riddle asked her to have intercourse, and when she refused, she claimed that Riddle choked her out and forced her to give him oral, saying, quote, "When I said no, he grabbed me by the throat, choked me and said, 'What if I just made you?'" Cartwright said that she performed oral in order to avoid anything else, labeling this as incredibly humiliating. In response, Riddle released a statement through his lawyer that read, quote, "The allegations by this independent female performer are completely false and another attempt to harass and humiliate Mr. and Mrs. Riddle and try to tarnish their reputation in the community." It also said that they had been aware for the past 2 years of this performer stalking Riddle's family, and we also found out that WWE knew about the allegations when they signed him in 2018. In response to Riddle saying that Cartwright was stalking him, she posted a photo of the two kissing one another with the date reading May 2019. With the photo, she wrote that "It's been 2 weeks and I'm still getting hate messages, threats, and seeing stuff like this. If I've been stalking for years, then why is this from 2019?
I'm gonna make this quick. I have never in my entire life sexually assaulted a man, woman, or anybody. And that includes Samantha Tavell, Candy Cartwright. I never sexually assaulted you. The story about that band trip and the driver being asleep and me forcing you to do stuff and hop on whatever is a complete lie. It's a fabricated story because you're still mad. You know why you're mad? Because yes, you're right. We had an affair. You have plenty of evidence of that. And you know what? I never denied it because it happened. Do I want to talk about it? Do I really want to share about it? No. It's embarrassing because I feel like a real piece of crap cheating on my wife and doing that and now having to talk about it publicly. But I have to.
Riddle said that yes, he did have an affair with her, but everything else was consensual. He admitted to the affair while being married to his wife, Lisa Rennie, since 2011, the two having 3 kids together already up until this point. So obviously very damaging for his professional and personal life, especially since he had just been called up. Riddle eventually filed a restraining order, which was later withdrawn. The accuser then filed a lawsuit against Riddle, the WWE, and Evolve president Gabe Sapolsky. The suit was dropped in July of 2021, and that was the end of that. He had been caught in controversy, but the WWE, knowing much more than we do, continued to push him. In 2021, Riddle won the United States Championship at Elimination Chamber, later going on to drop the title to Sheamus at WrestleMania 37, and after this came his most memorable run, a tag team with Randy Orton known as RK Bro. This went exactly how you would expect it to from a television standpoint, Riddle slowly trying to get in Orton's good graces before he gave in and accepted him as a partner. The two's dynamic worked really well because you started to see even Randy Orton having a good time. It was the perfect buddy cop mix. The two had great comedic segments, their matches were fun because of the crowd's investment in what the duo would get up to the following week. Randy Orton, 20 years into his career, started to have fun all over again, and you could just tell that both these guys were just having the time of their life. The two had 2 runs with the Raw Tag Team Championships in 2021 and 2022. After dropping the titles to the Usos, Randy Orton went away to have surgery on his back, leaving Riddle on his own. At that point, he was in a rivalry with the Bloodline, and he even got a chance to compete for the WWE Championship. In the summertime, Riddle and Seth Rollins worked a program together, another man who Riddle had rubbed the wrong way. This stemmed from comments that Riddle's now ex-wife made towards Seth's wife, Becky Lynch. Riddle's wife went on a rant about how the women in WWE were, quote, straight, skinny, jiggly fat, saying that these women need to squat. In the tirade, she posted a carousel of some women on the WWE roster and then herself for comparison, writing, here's a comparison of her and some women getting paid a ton of money for how they look, rant over. In this slideshow of examples was a picture of Becky Lynch, so essentially Becky was getting body shamed by Riddle's wife, and Seth Rollins did not like that. Rollins was drafted to SmackDown in 2020 and on a WWE watch-along commented saying that he has no interest in facing Riddle at any point in his career. As far as he was concerned, he could go to Raw. Riddle eventually approached Rollins and apologized for what his now ex-wife said. All of this was then brought into WWE programming where Rollins insulted Riddle about getting divorced and his kids not wanting to see him anymore. Riddle also clarified in 2024 that he wasn't on the same train as his wife, saying that he wouldn't body shame anyone and that Seth Rollins misunderstood him. Before Clash at the Castle, Rollins to Ariel Helwani said, quote, as long as I've known the guy, I've never really liked his attitude. I've never liked the way he goes about business. A lot of the ways he kind of sort of disrespected guys that were way above his pay grade when he was down in NXT. The Booker T's, the Goldbergs, the Brock Lesnar's. I'm just like, dude, pay your dues. Rollins in the interview, of course, trying to sell the fight, let out his personal opinions, but also gave Riddle huge props, saying that he was very impressive in the ring, but it was his head that got in his own way. A few months after this match, WWE wrote Matt Riddle off TV in December of 2022. This was because he had been suspended for 60 days. A 60-day suspension means that this was his second violation. The first one came in the summer of 2022 where he was set to face Rollins at SummerSlam. The second suspension was said not to be related to marijuana. WWE sent Riddle to rehab and it was said that if he didn't go, his contract would be terminated. After a rough end to 2022, Riddle returned on the Raw after WrestleMania 39, and from there, business was normal. Randy was still out of action, so Riddle was in the mid-card. He competed for the Intercontinental Championship at Money in the Bank against Gunther, and then came the end of Riddle's time in WWE. On September 10th, 2023, he alleged that he had been sexually assaulted by a New York City cop during a confrontation. He posted a picture of the officer on Instagram with this caption, also noting that he's finally leaving JFK and he never wanted to come back there ever again. It was reported that law enforcement was called after someone was behaving in a disorderly conduct while deplaning, and that person was Riddle. Riddle was released by WWE in September of 2023. A few days later, a video came out showing Riddle at that same airport behaving in a disorderly manner. He grabbed the microphone at the gate telling people that he, as well as others, knew how to fly, and he had a drink in his hand while making the announcement. One witness told TMZ that he was incredibly obnoxious and carried himself in an extremely loud and rude manner. Riddle was denied boarding due to possible intoxication. When police arrived, he apologized and he was allowed to leave the airport, but later went on to accuse them of assault as mentioned earlier. After 5 years with the company, Matt Riddle's time was up. Oddly enough, during the timeline, WWE and UFC officially merged. I bring this up because of the past history with Dana White. A few months after this, CM Punk returned to the company and Riddle continued to unnecessarily provoke stars, saying, hey WWE, you thought I was hard to deal with? Have fun with 0-2 CM Punk. Riddle has talked about how he saw this coming and that he was the one who took things too far, admitting that he had failed multiple drug tests for cocaine. He said, quote, you're allowed to smoke weed. I went to the strip club, did some cocaine a couple of times, and I failed a drug test for that. And those were the situations that Riddle got himself into, which cost him his WWE career. And it's a shame because he had all the tools of being a top star in the company for years and years to come, but he couldn't ever find consistency and simply couldn't stay out of his own way either. Whether it was rubbing top stars and legends the wrong way, outside noise, or getting himself into hot water that he couldn't swim out of, WWE continued to be lenient with him, thinking that he'd eventually get things on track, but that never materialized. It's a shame it ended the way it did because we never got to see a different and more serious side of the character. He and Randy never got to have their feud, and all the different things he could have done under Triple H just remain what ifs. We've seen wrestlers go on redemption arcs outside the company and work their way back many times, and who knows, that could happen. But for now, Riddle was the master of his own demise. Controversy after controversy, chance after chance, until it just was too much.